Next man up, 1025, the game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, broadcasting live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Hope everyone's having a great start to their Thursday. It is not a TD Thursday today. So, Teron Davenport not with us today. He is out at Mike Borgonzi's pre-draft presser, which we will play for you later in the show. So we will have TD for the full show tomorrow. It'll be a TD Friday. But because of the change, we are thrilled to be joined once again for the second time this week by Max Herz from Preds Radio as we prepare for the Preds season finale tonight. Max is live over at Bridgestone Arena. What's going on?
Hi, Jake. Morning. It's sad going through this and thinking about how it's the last time for the season.
I know. And when we talked on Monday, I really thought the next time we talked, it would either be today getting ready for a win and in game or tomorrow, hopefully getting ready for the playoffs. But obviously Monday night did not go the way that we hoped it would for the Predators. Slow start, couldn't really get the offense going. Scored a couple late from Luke Evangelista, but came up short and are eliminated from playoff contention. But Max, overall, what were your thoughts on the game on Monday against San Jose?
Yeah, I think it was a disappointing performance in the latest of a series of must-win games, and the Preds found different ways to bring it in a lot of games that they had to win before that over the last month, and they just didn't have enough in that one, which I thought was really surprising because I think they're much better than the Sharks, and I don't think the Sharks really did anything exceptionally well. I don't think the Predators were able to get to their game, and they didn't get to it until really the last 5 minutes, like you said, so that was disappointing for them to go down and not really fight back in the way that they have through the second half of the season. So I think that really does feel like an empty loss. And coupled with the fact that the Ducks went and lost to the Wild's AHL team on Tuesday night in Minnesota, that would have meant that this game was winning in.
Exactly. I mean, that was the disappointing part yesterday, waking up and seeing that the Ducks had lost. And it's disappointing to know that the help that you needed actually came through, but you couldn't get the win on Monday. And, there were a couple of things in that game that I know the icing call is what a lot of people are going to talk about. What were your thoughts on the way that played out? I thought, the goalie played the puck. It probably should have gone to center ice, even though I couldn't quite tell if it actually did get across the goal line.
Yeah, that seems like one where it's a 50-50 call. They may have missed the call. So just bring the face off to center and make it a wash. So I thought that was the easy move there. For some reason, they were very stubborn about it. They didn't want to hear the Predators' argument, it didn't seem like. And look, that doesn't mean you're automatically going to give up a goal. And they still gave up a goal. They had the puck taken away just outside their own blue line. And they gave the best players on the other team what was really a 3-on-1.
Yep.
So, I mean, you can't blame the icing fully for it, but that was a terrible call. And honestly, there have been some just poorly administered and poorly officiated moments over the last month that have gone against both teams in the Preds games. You hate to see moments like that defining these late season games, and you would rather see the officials take a hands-off type stance and make the safer move in those situations.
Right. It was disappointing because even though it was the Preds hadn't gotten much going in terms of good chances, it was still only 1-0 at that point, and then Macklin Celebrini was able to make it 2-0. Preds were able to get one back. Luke Evangelista got behind the defense, made it 2-1. Andrew Burnett pulls the goalie with 2 minutes, 13 seconds left. I know hindsight's 20/20, and you look back, the Sharks got the empty netter. I always want to know, what is your idea of when you think the goalie should be pulled? With your season on the line, I do understand pulling the goalie a little bit earlier on, even though it didn't actually end up working out.
With how little you've generated in that game, especially, I think the earlier the better, and that was the right time. There were 2 minutes and 13 seconds left. They had an offensive zone face-off. They had their top guys coming out fresh. They didn't have to use the timeout yet to get it. So, no, I think that was the perfect time, but the Preds have not been great 6-on-5 this season, so it was going to take a bucking of a trend if they were going to score. So they did end up getting one after the empty netter back at even strength and then trying it again, and they just threw the puck to the net. I liked the approach there. They got a tip from Haula before that. That almost went down and in. And I mean, they got their looks for a game where they didn't deserve it. They were within one and they were looking at the end. So you can't be mad about the finish, I don't think.
No, I agree. I think the Preds gave it all they had down the stretch. You just wish the offense came a little bit earlier on. And Luke Evangelista, he was more of a distributor this year than a scorer. Only had 10 goals coming into the game, but I thought it was really nice to see the way he scored those 2 goals, getting in behind the defense, using his speed to get to the net, and then just battling at the net front for that second goal. I mean, he was all up in the grill of Nedeljkovic for that second goal that made it 3-2.
Yeah, in a game where the Preds breakouts were the problem, the first one, that great cut through the neutral zone to get himself open and make the pass pretty simple for Nick Perbix to lead him into a breakaway. That's what the Preds have been missing all game. So I love that move by Evangelista. And on the second one, like you said, you're never wrong to go to the front of the net, especially in that situation. Would have liked to see that desperation much earlier in the game, but the Preds didn't have the puck in the zone enough to really establish it, I don't think.
Preds were eliminated from playoff contention on Monday night after that loss. And then a couple hours later, the Kings were able to hold on and beat the Kraken, and the Kings and Ducks clinched the final 2 playoff spots in the Western Conference. The reactions after the game, I thought, were really telling of the way this group felt about each other. I think you saw the veterans. You could see it on their face in the post-game press conferences and the locker room scrums that they really thought they were going to pull it off, and the disappointment of not being able to do it. I think that really shows you the difference between last year's team and this year's team and the buy-in you got, especially from your veteran players.
Yeah, this team went down together, and they were only in it because they came together. So I think that's exactly what you would expect and hope to see. But it really was a group that thought they were playoff bound, and I still think they deserved it. I think they are better than the Kings. We'll see what happens tonight with the Ducks. They know they're in. The Kings and the Ducks are still up for grabs for third, and the crazy part is the Oilers could still drop into the wild card too, but they're playing the Canucks tonight, so if they win, they take care of that. But I think the Predators are a more playoff worthy team at the bottom of the West than these other teams in there that struggled to the finish line. And I would have liked to see them in there. I would have liked to see how they matched up with the Avs. And I think the Predators would have had the goaltending advantage in that series. I'm still not a believer in the Avs goaltending situation, despite how obviously good they are as a team and how good they make their goalies look because of that. I would have loved to see what that series looks like. I think the Avs would absolutely destroy the Kings if that's the first round matchup. So I think the Preds were the best option here, and it really stings the guys like Stamkos and O'Reilly and Yossi and Forsberg, who have been there before, who have been to the finish line, who have played in the Cup final, and know that this team had some ingredients to get there, even if it was intangibles that were going to make them a playoff-worthy team.
No, I agree with you. I mean, the Preds were a far from perfect team, but when you compare the Ducks and the Kings and the Preds as opponents for the Avs, I think Colorado might be happy that they don't have to face a team that does have a couple of Conn Smythe winners on their team, and Steven Stamkos, who's won back-to-back cups with Tampa Bay, and Philip Forsberg and UC Saros in net. Like, I think Colorado, if they had their choice of who they didn't want to play, it probably would have been Nashville.
Yeah, and the under Andrew Brunette, the Preds have played the Avs well, so I don't know. It's past worth thinking about at this point, but
Right.
we were all gearing up for it for a reason. So
Preds made it interesting down the stretch after a slow start, but fall short of the playoffs for the second straight year. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you have any thoughts, questions for Max, we will get to those throughout this whole first hour as Max joins us live from Bridgestone Arena. Our phone and text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. When we come back, we'll get Max's thoughts on the season as a whole and where the Predators go from here. We'll also talk about tonight's season finale, maybe a debut happening tonight for the Nashville Predators, and the NHL playoffs still will roll along even if the Preds aren't in it. We'll get Max's thoughts on some of the matchups we'll see in the opening round. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We are off and running on this Thursday morning. Jake Lyman, Max Herz, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Tee it up with us at the 5th Annual 615 Open, May 28th at Hermitage Golf Course. We are once again supporting Folds of Honor to help them fund life-changing scholarships for families of America's fallen heroes. Register now to play or sponsor at 615open.com. Jake Lyman, Max Herz from Preds Radio, Parker Kelly with you on your Thursday morning. Talking Preds for the full first hour. Mike Borgonzi is at the podium right now doing his pre-draft press conference. We will play for that for you in the 10 a.m. hour. But Max, we talked about the Predators down the stretch, made a run to the playoffs, but obviously came up short with the loss on Monday night. But overall this season, I think you can look and say this was a playoff quality team for 4 months, but the beginning of the season obviously still counts just the same, and they just weren't able to overcome such a slow start to the season.
Yeah, I do think this season was a win in a lot of respects in terms of what different players showed you. I think you learned that the Steven Stamkos signing is one that can work for you and one that can go 2 more years if he plays out this contract with the Predators, which he's made it clear he wants to. And I think with his production this year, combined with the veteran leadership that he brought even when he wasn't scoring goals, that contract has more than enough value for the Preds to hang on to and not try and move Stamkos this summer with the new GM. I think the other things we saw was movement from the young players. Matt Wood, especially playing center for the last month and a half of the season, showed you that he is a piece and potentially a top line piece for the team long term, which is a really big deal. Evangelista made big strides after the contract dispute. I think he was a little underratedly playing to prove that his career is going to be a long one this year, and I think he showed us that. And I think the decor still has some questions, but I think Nick Hague was a good acquisition this year. And Justus Annunen made some strides at backup goalie and started the biggest game of the season for you. So I think a lot of guys showed you new things with the young players mixing in who are starting to have impacts too. And you made strides in the right direction for sure and showed that last year was a fluke and hopefully a one-off and something the Preds never go through again, because I don't think they want to go through that again.
Right. I think you can say that this team took a step in the right direction. And you mentioned a lot of the young players. I think that has to be one of the biggest bright spots. After the trade deadline, you saw some of those young guys who there's a lot of promise for, a lot of hope for the long term of this franchise. And you got big contributions from Matthew Wood. You got big contributions from Ryan Ufko. And you saw flashes from guys like Zach LaRue and others that make you think that they can be long-term pieces for this team moving forward.
Yeah, and Barry Trotz did deliver on what he seems like he had told us over and over again every week here on 102.5 The Game. He's holding the roster spots over with some veterans until he feels the young guys were ready. And for most of those guys, he didn't think that point arrived until halfway through this season. And the way he maneuvered the deadline showed that timing, and I think it worked out. They didn't think Zach LaRue was playing well enough to make the team on opening night. They thought he was good enough to play in the final 25-plus games of the season and play a pretty big role. And I think he played well. Joachim Kimmel had a great preseason, made the cut. They didn't have much room for him in the lineup at the beginning and had a pretty short leash before sending him back to Milwaukee. Now here at the end of the season, he's playing the most he ever has, and I think he's made pretty good on that playing time and will push to be a regular from the start next year. He's someone who has more tools that the Preds haven't deployed yet at the NHL level. I think he's earned himself a right to show those at the beginning of next season, and preseason will be a start of that. For Fedor Svechkov, I don't think he's had a great season, but he's survived it. He's going to end up playing 70 games. He's going to play in different roles throughout the lineup. He's played with everybody, and I think he's proven that he can be an NHL center. He still has a lot of room to grow, but he's the guy who they brought up ahead of schedule and had to use more than they wanted to. So I think back to the way Trotz has phrased this the whole time, Jake, that he knows the timeline for his guys and was trying to help them get there on their own schedule. And I think that did work out, even if it doesn't always look the cleanest with how much the roster changed. I think it was done properly this year. And the fact that they almost made the playoffs while doing it, I think is a plus for them, despite the fact that, hey, if you are bringing up your young guys, maybe you'd rather have a better draft pick. but I think the way the Preds engineered this, they wanted it to go this way. And boy, would it have been great if they snuck in. But I think these guys did prove a lot even without that bonus.
Yeah, I agree. And I think with Barry Trotz, he's talked about threading the needle and trying to stay competitive at the NHL level while also building up the prospect pool. And we've seen that the young prospects, the ones that we've seen already in Nashville and the ones that are yet to make their debut, it's looking pretty strong for the future of the Predators. Obviously, you wish the last 2 years went better at the NHL level. But Barry Trotz stepping down. They're looking for his successor. And we've talked plenty about what that might look like, who that could be. But in general, no matter who it is, Max, this is an important offseason. What do you think are some of the biggest decisions that are going to face whoever the new GM is?
I think philosophy will be the biggest decision. And I think that will come across in interviews. So I think some of that will be at least privately predetermined as the new hire or hires are picked, if they hire both a director of hockey ops and a general manager. And Steven Stamkos said this yesterday. He was looking at it through the GM's lens during his interview, and he said, is the GM going to see how close we got this year and say, hey, I'm keeping this crew together? Or is the GM going to look at it and say, hey, they haven't made the playoffs the last 2 years. Let's change everything. So there are going to be differences in philosophy between what new executives think about what could and should be done with the Preds. I think the biggest thing will be prioritizing where the young players fit in alongside the veterans that you have, because you're not really losing much this year. Eric Halla is a UFA. Tyson Jost is a UFA. Both those guys have only been here one season. So other than that, if you want to keep everybody, you could keep everybody. But it's about, where is Matt Wood going to play? Who's Matt Wood going to play with? Is Brady Martin going to be NHL ready this year? Who is he going to play with? Who do we want to try him with in preseason? What is it going to be like deciding whether or not Martin can make the team? And also, there's a chance he can play in the AHL next year if some rule changes that sound like they're going to go through do go through with roster rules. So it's about, where do these homegrown guys fit in? Where do the veterans fit in? And I think the D is where we could maybe see some bigger changes. The majority of the veteran defensemen are under contract going into next year. I think Adam Wilsby is in line for a bigger role as long as he can stay healthy. I think Ryan Ufko has shown you enough that he should push to make the team out of camp next year. And I also think that they need Tanner Molendyk to be in the NHL next year. Maybe not at the beginning of the season, but that's something they've got to be prepping for. And I think that's something you make decisions in mind with as well. So, you have Yossi and Shea at the top. Yossi still has 2 years left on his contract, taking him through age 37. Brady Shea still has 5 years on that free agent contract. Perbix and Haig are both under contract for next year. So I think there's a balance between keeping it together and maybe finding some places where you can create some flexibility, whether it would be moving a veteran out or bringing somebody new in to try and find a fit somewhere with someone.
Yeah, and I think you can look at last year's offseason and say that there wasn't a whole lot of flexibility to change wholesale what the roster looks like, but they added Nick Hague, they added Nick Perbix. Do you think this offseason it might be more about what the guys you already have and the growth that they have heading into next season? You mentioned Brady Martin possibly making the team. I think Tanner Molendyk would be a huge piece. And some of the other young guys taking a step like we saw from Luke Evangelista this past year. That could be where the most growth comes for the Predators in 2026.
Yeah, definitely. When you have ascending players on your roster, guys that you know everything about, who have been pro players for 3-4 years, like the group that's up in the NHL right now, you know what you got, and you can dream on them a little bit. So I personally, unless you find somebody you love, would rather have those premium spaces in your lineup left open for someone like Kimmel to get a bigger and longer look, rather than bringing in a veteran if you don't have to.
Yep, I would agree with that, just because you don't know what the ceiling is for some of these prospects at this point. If you go and bring in a veteran to play on the third line off the streets, you probably know about what that guy's going to be at that point. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Again, if you have any thoughts, questions, we've got Max for the full first hour of the show today, talking Preds as the Predators get ready for their season finale tonight against the Ducks over at Bridgestone Arena. Lots to be excited about tonight's game. especially the possibility of a debut. Aiden Fink, he's been down at Milwaukee, been tearing it up, and has been signed to his entry-level contract. We'll talk to Max about what that could look like if he makes his debut tonight. And also, it is Fan Appreciation Night, so some reasons to head out to Bridgestone Arena and cheer on the team one final time this season. We'll get into all of that coming up next. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Jake Lyman, Max Herz, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 1025 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you here in our studios. Max Herz is out at Bridgestone Arena getting ready for the Preds season finale tonight against the Anaheim Ducks. 7 o'clock puck drop over at Bridgestone Arena. And Max, one of the big storylines for tonight's game, Aiden Fink possibly making his NHL debut. Before we get into why that may happen and the pros and cons of it, just what have been your impressions of the player, Aiden Fink, as he's made his way up from Penn State, played a couple of games in Milwaukee, and now has been added to the active roster for the Predators?
It's pretty cool to see the 7th to last pick of a draft 3 years ago have the success he had. And it's such a cool story that David Poile got that one final draft pick on the floor. Tom Fitzgerald and the Devils made a 7th round pick swap for David to make one more announcement and get one more standing ovation at the draft here in Nashville 3 years ago. And I mean, what a last little bit of perfect Poile magic that this turns out to be a player. And he had amazing numbers in the AJHL the year in his draft year for the Brooks Bandits, who are a great team in that league for a long time. They recently changed leagues to move to the BCHL from the AGHL. But like all I'll remember from David Poile, Aiden Fink from Brooks, and he wasn't at the draft. And we talked to him about this yesterday. He was in one of his first college English classes at Penn State that day, so he could not be at the draft. He got the call. He spoke to David Poile on the phone. He immediately understood the magnitude of the selection and, of course, was honored to be picked. And after 3 really productive years at Penn State, he plays 6 AHL games for Milwaukee over the last couple weeks and is basically their best player with 3 goals, 10 points in 6 games. And Kevin Gravel is here too, the Admirals captain, and he might play tonight with some of the injuries the Preds have on D down the stretch. And he said, like, thank God we got Aiden Fink when we did, because we needed skill down the stretch with all of their high-end skill players up on the Preds down the stretch. He stepped right in for his pro debut and became one of the best players on the team. So it's really a great story. And like you said, we're not sure if he's going to debut tonight. He is able to. He's on the squad. He practiced with the Preds yesterday. But it's pretty crazy looking back at that 2023 draft. The majority of the first round has debuted, and we've seen a lot of those players in person now. But for even with the second round, the 2nd through 7th round, and Fink was the 7th to last player picked in the draft, only 16 guys out of 192 outside of the first round have played in an NHL game 3 years later.
That's crazy. And I mean, Aiden Fink, late in that draft, going to possibly make his debut tonight. And Max, I know there's been a little confusion, even from us here, about the implications of him playing. I know he signed his 3-year entry-level contract earlier this week. It starts this year. Does it burn a year off of his contract if he plays tonight? And what would be the pros and cons of having him make his debut in a game that obviously doesn't have any meaning for a playoff race?
It does not change anything contractually.
Okay.
Since the deal starts this year, this is a year on it. And that's common. That's common for college players. And he signed that on Monday before the Preds were eliminated. So it's not necessarily a, hey, let's give him a game and a contract because we're out of it type situation, which I think is why we were not 100% sure that he would play tonight.
Gotcha. So that's something, I mean, that's a reason to come out to Bridgestone, see Aiden Fink possibly play tonight. I know Andrew Brunette has not exactly made a concrete decision on that one way or the other, but a chance to possibly see him make his NHL debut here in the Preds season finale. Max, it's also fan appreciation night, I believe, over at Bridgestone Arena. So lots of reasons for fans to come out to Bridgestone and cheer on the Preds one last time this season.
Yeah, there's a ton going on, and I'm bad at remembering what's where, so I'm going to pull up the list of things we have going on right now. Let's see. It's been Fan Appreciation Week all week.
I believe I saw it's the first 10,000 get a gold Preds cowboy hat tonight.
Yeah. We've got the gold cowboy hats, so gates open at 5:30. So first half of the fans in will come and get some of those. We got tons of other stuff going on. Tons of giveaways throughout the game. So yeah, make sure you're here. It's really, really sad that this is the last one. Felt like the crowd was really gearing up for playoffs, and our fans have been so amazing all season. And to get those meaningful games down the stretch again for you guys has been so great. So let's do it one more time.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see the atmosphere in that building, especially for some of the big games that have been played over the last month and a half. And going to be cool to have one last one, even though it does not mean there's going to be playoff hockey. Something that I know a lot of people are now focused on since the Predators have been eliminated is the draft lottery. And we did see last year the Islanders jumped from 11 to 1. The Preds, I believe, as it stands right now, are the 11th in odds. Is there any significant jump that can be made based on the result of tonight's game and some of the results around the league?
They can move one spot in either direction. If they get a point, or excuse me, if they win tonight, they would move back in the lottery to 12th. They would pass the Devils, who are done and are 1 point ahead of the Preds. If the Preds lose in regulation and the Blues win tonight, the Blues would pass the Preds and the Preds would be 10th in the lottery. Blues play Utah tonight. Utah has nothing to play for. So they can move one spot in either direction. So no significant change.
Right.
But if you go from 11th to 12th and you win the lottery, you don't get the number 1 overall pick. You would move up 10 spots from 12 to 2.
Right.
That would be significant.
And that's something we saw last year, correct? Like the Islanders moved up from 11 to 1, but I'm forgetting somebody else moved up 10 spots and couldn't get into the second spot.
Yeah, that was Utah.
Yes,
right?
that's what. Utah moved up from 13 to 3, which I thought was pretty crazy. So, I mean, that's something that will be interesting to keep an eye on as we head towards the summer, especially because the Preds would love to add somebody in the top 10 again that can add to what is already a pretty deep prospect pool. And the Preds have multiple draft picks again. So maybe could be, depending on what the new GM wants to prioritize, could be moving around with some of the second and third round picks that they've acquired as well.
Yeah, they have a ton of draft capital. So that's a lot of freedom for the new front office to be coming in with, for sure. And something that they can either use at this year's draft if they have things they want to do right away, or things they can hold on to or push down the line to get more futures.
Right. Preds have put themselves in a good spot with the prospect pool and the draft capital they've gotten through trades over the last few years, and going to be a very important offseason coming up. But one more game to go again tonight, 7 o'clock against the Anaheim Ducks, 6 o'clock pregame right here on 102.5 The Game with Max. We've got one more segment with Max here on this Thursday morning. We will talk the NHL playoffs as a whole and wrap up the Preds season coming up after this. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you have any questions, get those in on our phone and text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jake Lyman, Max Herz, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Today, the Nashville Sounds take on the Worcester Red Sox at First Horizon Park. First pitch is at 6:35, and you can catch all of the action on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Family Leisure and Social Cantina. Jake Lyman, Max Herz, Parker Kelly with you, wrapping up hour number one on this Thursday. Final segment with Max as the Predators play their season finale tonight. Max, let's get your thoughts on the overall NHL playoffs, as the Eastern Conference is already set. Everybody's played all 82 over there. What do you think of the way the bracket sets up? Buffalo and Carolina win the division. The Sabres finally snapped the long playoff drought. Do you think they could be dangerous as we roll into the postseason?
I am a Sabres believer. The series I'm really intrigued by is Lightning versus Canadians in the first round. And the Lightning have earned home ice in that series, which I think may be a deciding factor. I would have loved to see that series start in Montreal. That would have really been something. But Tampa with home ice, I think that may be tough for the Canadians on what's really their first go-round as a real contender, top of the conference contender. I think the Penguins can beat the Flyers. I don't think the Penguins have enough to go beyond that. So I like the Hurricanes coming out of the Metro as long as they can get past the Senators, which I think they can pretty easily. So I feel like it's going to be the Lightning over the Sabres. I don't know. I haven't done my full thinking on this yet, but I think the Hurricanes are coming out of the East. I think the Stars are coming out of the West.
Wow.
I am very high on the Stars. And if I had to pick a cup champ right now, I'd pick the Stars.
Dallas is a very good team, and they have the third most points across the entire NHL, but finished second in their division behind Colorado. I did think it was funny. I don't know if you saw this, Max. Buffalo clearly not used to hosting playoff hockey games because the first 2 days of games they're supposed to host, they have Tate McRae and the Wiggles playing at their arena.
I think that was fake, actually,
but
fake? I do like the sentiment.
I wanted to believe it was real because I thought that was hilarious that the Wiggles were going to stop the Sabres from playing a home playoff game. I thought that was hilarious. I know you have thoughts on the playoff format, Max, too, and I saw this last night. The Penguins and the Flyers would be the 7 and 8 seeds if you just seeded the Eastern Conference 1 through 8, but they face off in the first round. Kind of similar to what we'll see in the Western Conference, where the second and third highest point totals are going to face off in the first round. It is just so weird how this playoff format ends up matching teams up in the first round.
Yeah, and it's not changing. So it's not really worth even critiquing.
Right.
But the NHL's thinking on this is they understand that good teams are going to get knocked out in the first round because of this, but they want great first round series. And I think Stars and Wild will be a great first round series. And I think Lightning Canadians will be a great first round series. And it gives you the regional rivalries that you used to have very frequently in the regular season. And with the changes in the schedule, you don't play your division as much. So Penguins Flyers as a playoff series is extremely valuable for the league. So that's why they like this format. And I think the argument for it is the NBA first round has become basically meaningless. And also they've added a round before the first round. And look, the NBA is playing right now. I have no idea who's playing. So I think the NHL does have it right in a lot of respects, despite the fact that a few teams are going to get screwed over.
Yeah, the NBA play-in I know has been going on, and some people really like it, but I'm very glad the NHL has not decided to copy them and adopt it, because you play 82 games for a reason. I don't think 1 or 2 games should decide who gets into the playoffs. Like, there's a reason you have the point system and you have the standings the way they are. You don't need to add 2 more teams to a field that already has half of the league into the playoffs.
Yeah, and they're not going to do that. They've made it pretty clear every time that Commissioner Gary Bettman or others that are decision makers on this have been asked about it. They said, no, we like what we've got. We know it's not perfect, but we think it's perfect for us. And I actually admire them for that a little bit. And if the players wanted it changed, it could have been collectively bargained in the most recent agreements, and it's not a priority for the players. I think the players have the hockey player mindset that we're going to have to get through everybody anyway, so it doesn't really matter who we play first. We just want to win and we just want to play. So I think the hockey mindset is what really shapes this, and the fan bickering doesn't make it through because the players just aren't wired that way.
Right. The players know they've got to win 16 games to lift the cup. So, whoever they put in front of them, they'll figure it out. The only thing that's really up for grabs tonight, and we touched on this earlier, is the seeding in the Pacific and that final wild card. Edmonton, Anaheim, and LA all within a point of each other. Is the nightmare scenario for the Avalanche that somehow Edmonton loses to Vancouver and falls into that second wild card and has to play, and the Avs get the Oilers in the first round?
That would be crazy. Yeah, because Utah is locked into the first wild card. So it'll be Mammoth and Golden Knights in the first round. And I'm going to be tempted to pick the Mammoth in that series.
Yeah, I kind of like that.
I really like them. Yeah, the Kings could have home ice as by far the worst team in the playoffs, which would really be something. Oilers have 91 points. Kings and Ducks each have 90. One of those teams is going to have home ice as second in the Pacific. One of those teams is going to be third in the Pacific, and one is going to be the second wild card and face the Avs. All three of them are playing eliminated teams tonight. The Ducks play the Preds, the Oilers play the Canucks, and the Kings play the Flames. You know one of them is going to slip up with how terrible this Pacific race has been.
Yeah, and talk about the tale of two sides of the bracket. If one side in the West is Colorado, Dallas, Minnesota, Edmonton, and the other is Vegas, Anaheim, LA, and Utah. I mean, that would be hilarious, but it's just the way that it all worked out. Max, final thoughts on this Preds season as a whole. I know we went through a lot of it, but I really do think even though you come up short and you don't want to take any moral victories, the way this team was able to rally after the stretch where you lose 11 of 13, a lot of people were calling for the coach to be fired, to be able to come together and get within one game of reaching the playoffs, I thought was really impressive by this bunch.
Yeah, I think the team was really well coached this season. I think they got everything they possibly could out of players like Steven Stamkos, Ryan O'Reilly, Philip Forsberg, and Roman Josi. Like the best players were the best players. And we saw how different the team is when Roman Josi isn't playing, even over the last week. But when he had injuries earlier in the season, that was when they dug themselves a hole. So Roman Josi is still the leader of this team and still the guy who makes the biggest difference on the back end. Stamkos getting to 40 goals is unbelievable. The progress from the young players, I think, is a really, really positive sign going into next year and gives you a lot of hope for what this team could look like as they go through some changes. And I think a lot of these things are happening at the right time. And it's not the way that other organizations would design it on paper, but it's where the Preds are. They've gone through the plan. I think for the most part, it has gone as they would like it to. And I think they're at a really interesting spot right now because I think they could contend next season. So I'm just thankful that I get to be a part of this whole thing. I'll leave that as my closing thought. Just how much fun it is to be on the radio and be at the game. And I'm really sad this is the last one. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody tonight and hopefully having one more fun game on home ice.
Yes, it has been so much fun getting to chat with you about the Preds week in and week out and talk about this team as they've tried to make this playoff push. But one last game at Bridgestone Arena tonight, 7 o'clock puck drop, Preds and Ducks, 6 o'clock pregame with Max. Go say hi to Max at Barrel House pregame if you're heading out to Bridgestone Arena. Max, always appreciate you coming on. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, guys, thank you.
Max Herz from Preds Radio joining us as he does every week. And the Preds, again, their season finale tonight at Bridgestone Arena against the Anaheim Ducks. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you have any thoughts on the Preds, we'll try and get to those later on in the show. But we are a week out from the NFL draft. And Mike Borgonzi, just earlier this hour, talked to the media about the draft process and what the Titans might look to do next Thursday as the NFL draft begins. We will play that press conference for you coming up next. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up here on 102.5 The Game. Second hour on this Thursday. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Big thanks to Max Herz for joining us in the first hour talking Preds. But Mike Borgonzi, Titans general manager, spoke to the media last hour, getting ready for next week's draft. Let's take a listen to what he had to say right now.
Good morning. Good to see everybody. Before we get started here today, I just want to take a moment to speak on Coach Mack and the passing of Coach Mack. He had an impact on so many people in the National Football League, so many people within this organization, so many people in this room. He was passionate about this team, this organization in general, the city of Nashville. I had a lot of good conversations with Coach Mack over the past year, particularly on the practice field last year, just talking about life, football in general. Learned a lot from him, team building, culture, doing it with the right type of people. He's certainly going to be missed by a lot of people here. And just want to thank him for everything that he did for us. So thanks, Coach Mack. We're about a week out here from the draft. Excited here. I think the process has been really good, especially with the new coaching staff that we have here. I think the communication, collaboration between the scouts and the coaches has been phenomenal. Just discussing players and how these players are going to be used in our scheme now, the right type of players we want in here to continue to build in this locker room, to build the culture. A lot of people to thank. The scouts have done a tremendous job here over the past year, putting in all this work. Coaches during the spring here put so much work in evaluating these guys, and we had finished up meetings here the last couple of weeks with our scouts and coaches. Going to wrap up here, meet with our medical staff again today. So feel really good about the process we've had. Want to thank a lot of other people too, the IT department, our analytics, for all the support that they've given us as we've gathered this information here, over the last couple of months. So when you feel good, you feel prepared. We could draft tonight if we had to. So I'll open up for questions.
Mike, do you think Jeremiah Love, even though he's a running back, he profiles to be a special running back? Do you think that that's something that would be worth a value of a high first-round pick, like, say, 4th overall?
I certainly think there's a cluster of players up there that we really like, but in particular, Jeremiah's, I think he's a special player. I've talked about this at the combine before. I think his speed, can do things out of the backfield as a receiver. But there's also a group of edge guys up there they're really good too. So I think we'll have some really good options there at 4.
Does slotting of salary come into play with who you pick or the position you pick?
I think you have to have all these discussions. But at the end of the day, we always talk about taking the best player available at that point. So those discussions, premium positions versus non-premium, I mean, those are always talked about because you're always looking at your roster and your salary cap that we have to work with in forecasting your roster for this year, next year, the years coming. So certainly those are discussions that we do have.
Look at the premium positions and how that could change from scheme to scheme. How much do you feel like middle linebacker, inside backer is a premium position with Robert Saleh in his defensive scheme?
Well, he certainly had a lot of success with linebackers he's had in San Francisco Jets, even his time back in Seattle with those guys. Like I said, I think there's going to be a cluster of players up there. You're looking for impact players when you get up there, when you're taking that high in the draft. And who's going to have the most impact? Who's the best player really available? But certainly there's a linebacker there that's pretty good as well. So
last year, you made it pretty clear that the number 1 pick was not for sale, that you were intent on taking Cam. This year at number 4, are you open for business? Or are you more likely to stick and pick? And if you're open for business, how far you feel like you can go back and still get a premium talent?
It depends, and I think to answer the first question, I think we're going to remain flexible and fluid where we're at, because I do think there's a handful of players that we really do like it for. And now, we've already started the discussions, but just in terms of scenarios, if we move back a few spots, if we went back 10 spots, where would that leave us with players? So those are the discussions really over this that we've been having really over the last couple of weeks. But certainly that's one of the options, sir.
What kind of field do you have for Arizona and the Jets, and how important is it for you to have a pre-field, or at 4, is it kind of irrelevant what they do? You're ready for any scenario?
Paul, I think we will be ready for any scenario. If you listen to everything that's out there now, though, it's a lot of smoke screens. So I think you do have to pay attention to it, right? But certainly I think that we're going to have options there at 4, no matter what the team does in front of us.
Determining how big of an upgrade a player has to be at a position that maybe isn't a need to justify selecting a player at that position over a place where maybe you don't have a starter ready to play there.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the I guess the challenge of the draft, and that's why you always stay true to the board, because you can make mistakes if you're trying to force need and you're taking a player that's a lesser value. So I think we always go back to, take the best player. You never know what's going to happen, this year, next year, just because we have a need this year, and how we can acquire players. The draft and free agency obviously is a big part of it, but there's certainly other avenues to acquire players throughout the year. So you never want to make a rash decision and just force a need for a player on draft night. I think that's really why we always talk about taking the best player available, and everybody rolls their eyes. But I think that's important, though.
You've got a spot at 4, and you said you've got a handful of players that you like. Mm-hmm. So if someone trades up to 3, is there any panic that they're going to take your guy, or are there enough guys where you're like, take whoever you want?
Well, I think like I said, I think there's enough guys that we feel comfortable at 4, even if there was a player selected before us that we had in there that we feel good about taking at 4.
You mentioned the linebacker in Styles. Who does he remind you of when you watch his Ohio State tape and you see what he was able to do athletically at the combine?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the testing, not really anybody. I mean, his testing numbers, I think he broke every testing number for a linebacker. He's tall, he's rangy, he's a former safety, so he's got great feel and coverage. His length can take up a lot of space on the field. Tremaine Edmonds was a linebacker that comes to mind that was similar size, I guess. But even he wasn't this athletic. So it's a tough comp, Jared.
You see left tackle in the first 3 rounds is kind of tying into what we talked about already, but you've obviously got Dan Moore and a big investment in Dan Moore. Yeah. Would it be at all difficult to take that guy knowing you're either sitting a $22 million guy or you're sitting a high pick in the first round, given that you have a lot of other places where you need to get people on the field?
The big guys are hard to find, Paul. As you know, there's not too many guys that are that big and athletic. I think that's why, those guys get taken so high. Or when you have a chance to acquire, those type of positions, I think you have to do it regardless. And then, however it shakes out, whoever wins the position battle, and, to have an opportunity to get a young tackle in here to develop, no matter where we take them, I think you have to certainly think about doing that.
With a guy like Reese, he actually had an interview. He said he just was kind of out there just figuring stuff up as he goes along. When you look at a guy like that, you're projecting him into an edge position. Like, how do you go about doing that with some type of accuracy? I know it's always a crap shot, but with some type of accuracy.
When you look at the physical tools, and for Abel, I mean, he's one of the more explosive players that I've ever seen. In terms of his burst, his ability to close, his explosion on contact. So he has all the tools to do it. They were using him so much off the ball, on the line of scrimmage. And with a player like that, you can do a lot with early. You can use them in that spinner position, joker, however you want to call it. But you certainly see the flashes there of him being a dominant pass rusher. So I think you're looking at the tools and the upside there.
Is Bain's driving issue a driving issue, or is it perhaps indicative of a larger issue that would be a larger concern for a team that might draft him?
Yeah, I mean, we've known about that information for a while. We've researched it, discussed it. We've talked to Ruben multiple times. We've had multiple touch points with Ruben, and feel really good about the person. People make mistakes, but we really enjoyed having him in here and discussing a lot of stuff that that had happened before. But we feel good with Ruben.
Was that something he was forthcoming about, or did you guys find out that information and then have to bring it up with him? How did that kind of go?
I think you have a series of questions when you first meet with somebody at a touch point. I think we might have asked the question first, at the combine, but we certainly knew about it. A lot of teams did during the summer.
Anything you learned, I guess, last year, your first go around as GM, that you have changed up this year, whether it's how many pro days you go to, who you brought in on 30 visits, who was involved in the process, any tweaks that you made?
I think it changes year to year, but certainly you're always looking at ways to improve. I think we've done a tremendous job this year just in terms of working, I guess, the bottom of the board and the backboard between our scouts and coaches. So that's one thing we maybe changed up a little bit this year, just in terms of stacking some of those players and starting on those players earlier.
Can you give us a sense of kind of the dynamic of the war room on Thursday night? What it'll be like?
It's exciting, but when you put in all the work, it's just like before a game. If you're a coach and you feel really good about it, so there's a sense of calmness, but you're excited for draft night. But you feel confident where you're at because you put the work in.
You talked about center and right guard being areas that you want to create competition for camp.
Yep.
And how far into this draft can you find centers and right guards who can come in and compete day one start?
I think there's good depth in this draft, interior offensive line, day one and even 2 and 3, Terry. Those guys, you can find guys in those middle rounds that have especially those interior offensive linemen, it's a lot of intangibles they're looking for, smart, tough guys. And some of those guys maybe not have tested well, and that's why they didn't get taken higher. But a lot of these guys play in the league. So I think there's some good depth in this draft there.
From 10 minutes to 8 minutes affect you at all?
No, I'm actually happy about it. It gets round one going faster, so it won't have much of an effect.
Going back to the offensive line stuff, not necessarily a knock on college coaching, but just how different the game is for the offensive linemen. Is it kind of like starting from square one as soon as they get here, no matter how ready you think they might be?
Yeah, that's a good question, Buck. And I think there's two things. I think the game has changed, obviously, so much. I remember even going back to 2013, we had the first pick with Eric Fisher, and so much guys playing out of 2-point stances because the pass game and quick game, but certainly there's another element now with these guys, moving school to school, and not having consistency with coaching, and with consistency comes, you have to have fundamentals. So I think that's a big part of it. A lot of these guys have to come in here and get back to the basics with fundamentals.
How's the melding of the new coaching staff with the scouting staff gone as you put together the board, and do you expect, or A, do you expect it, and B, how much was there kind of a friction in the coming together of opinion?
I think you're always going to have healthy discussions, and no one's going to, if you're agreeing on everything, it's not good. So you need to have those healthy discussions, before the draft, whether it's between the scouts or between the scouts and the coaches. And sometimes they can bring up things too that we may have not seen. So I think you always have to have an open mind, and you can't be stubborn when you first evaluate a player and say, this is the grade I gave him. now you want to stand strong on on what you really think of the player. But if you feel like yeah, maybe I missed that, and that's the biggest thing, having humility in the process. But that part of it has been great, Paul. With the coaches, we've had a lot of communication here over the last couple of months, even dating back to free agency. They've been really good to work with.
Like you talked about last year when you took the job, how you're going to be patient in this process and stick to plans and try and accumulate assets. Going into this draft, how far along are you in that process, and how big is next week towards your ultimate goal of what you're building?
Yeah, I mean the opportunity, the draft is the lifeblood of your organization when you're bringing in players that you can develop and develop your culture. So every draft is really important. I think we added some really good players, I think, in free agency that helped us. And I've talked about this before. Just in terms of some guys that had played for some of the coaches we have here, Coach Sala and Coach Dable. So that has helped us, but every draft is vital. When you have an opportunity to acquire young players that you can develop and really build in your culture.
Along the lines of those healthy disagreements that I'm sure all teams have, if there was a player that you absolutely loved that Robert did not like, would that be hard for you to draft that player knowing that he's the one that has to coach him? Or is this where you being the personnel guy and being assigned the job of building the roster versus coaching the roster would take a precedence?
Yes, you would never take a player that a coach does not want. It's happened over the years. I've seen it. I've been in the league for a long time. That's how you develop friction in the organization. You need buy-in when you're taking these players. So whether it's a position coach or it's the head coach, that's why you have so many of these discussions, headed into the draft, and you never want to force a player onto a coach that they don't believe in.
If I can follow up, what's kind of the line of, at the end of the day, I'm the personnel guy, I'm the general manager, been working with the scouts for months on this, and you're a coach who's not a personnel guy, of making him maybe see things the way that you want him to see them or the way that you see them?
You have those discussions heading into the draft, but if you can't come to an agreement on a player, like I said, I've seen it happen before. It's not good for the relationship. It's not good for the player either when you don't have buy-in from the coaching that when you take them.
How much of this class will be tailored to support Cam if he needs?
I think you're always looking to support the quarterback, and certainly protection is one. Getting them playmakers is another thing. So to answer your question, yes, I think that is important.
Season program, but while we're talking about Cam, how's he looking in the rehab process?
Good. He's been out there. I'm sure you've seen some of the videos online and throwing, and he looks good. He's trending in the right direction.
He'll be throwing during minicamp?
Yeah, I mean, right now I think he's trending that way. So yes.
Any early feel? I know there's not that much going on, but for Robert's tone and themes and stuff like that in the early gathering of who's here.
Yeah, no, I think it's been great. You could feel the kind of the excitement and the energy in the building when they first came in. I was in that first team meeting, and Robert does a very good job of laying down the expectations and standards, and you felt like everybody knew where they were going when you left that meeting, and in terms of what he wants for this team, this football team, and that's a big part of leadership. But you can feel the excitement just walking around the building with the guys being in here over the last couple of weeks.
Talked about the smoke screen element from other teams. How important a piece is this to you in preparation in terms of trying to figure out what everyone else is doing, and by the same token, you have to show up with us today wearing a bat for your end too?
It's just part of it. I mean, you have to listen to it. You do hear scuttle, whether it be on social media or people you're talking to in the league. You're trying to collect information, and you're trying to figure out what is the right information. But at the end of the day, you have to stay true to your board, know what you have there. Like I said, we've put a ton of work in right now, so we feel really comfortable, heading into the draft, no matter what happens.
All right. Do you also have to participate in it?
Sure. That's the game within the game. Yeah.
When you look at this draft, is it unique to where there's more top level players at non-premium positions?
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah. Certainly the Ohio State guys, the safety, linebacker, they're really good players. It's just one of those drafts where, just so happens there's a lot of non-premium positions that are impact players. Yeah.
Receiver, obviously, that's a premium position. What are your thoughts on the top end of this receiver group?
I think it's a deep receiving class, and I think the top end is really good. I feel good about the options that we have up there in day 1 and even 2 and 3. I think there's some really good options here.
How much do Tyson's medicals concern you?
We take all those medical information. It wasn't concerning to us at the end of the day. But every team might see it differently, though, Jared.
Trading down from 35 rather than 4, how much easier is it because there's less separation between the talent?
At 35?
You're going down from 35 rather than 4.
Yeah. It depends. Really, draft to draft, it really depends. Some guys you don't expect sometimes that come out of round 1. You think they're going to get taken in round 1, right? Everyone's draft board is a little bit different. So, I think you have to look at the cluster of players that you have in there. Sometimes when you're picking high in the second, there's a player that you really like. I think you just take the player. Now there's 2 or 3 players that you like at the same value, and you think you move back a little bit and still get that one of those players, then you do that. So I think it varies year to year. Sitting at the top of that second round.
How do you feel about older guys coming out? A, was a 25-year-old doing as well as he was doing because he was beating up 21-year-old in some cases? And B, how do you feel about a guy starting his career with you, that old?
Yeah, it's just, it's part of it now. I think there's a lot less juniors coming out since COVID. I think it might be, I forget the exact number, it's probably half the players of juniors that have come out, so young guys. So the draft is become older, especially I guess on day 3. A lot of guys that will come back for NIL money. That's just part of it. I do think there's an element of guys having more maturity though when you're taking them there. Some of the guys are more fundamentally sound. But certainly you're balancing that of a younger player that still has a higher ceiling too. So you do have to take that into account though, especially if there's injuries to an older player.
Where is NIL money and players staying in college? Where has that affected the draft most?
I would say on day 3, because a lot of guys will get projections, after the season and where they go. And if they feel like they can go back, if they get a lower round projection and they feel they can go back and still make money in NIL, they'll go back to school. So I think you've seen it more in the later rounds, for sure.
Obviously feel good about, your preparation heading into the draft, but like the night before, is there any sense of nerves or anxiety? Like what is maybe that night before, like kind of the 3-day chaos like for you?
Yeah, it feels like, as a player, it feels kind of like game day. This is our game day. This is so you do. That's always natural, I think, to have some, call it nervous energy sometimes, but that's a good thing though. So.
Hendon on the roster. Obviously, Cam is the starting quarterback. You guys made the financial commitment to Mitch. He's the backup. Will's still on the roster, but you guys brought in Hendon Hooker. Walk us through that.
Yeah, he obviously had a great career at Tennessee, and he's had some unfortunate injuries. We brought him in here to work out, and had a really good workout, and he's a high character kid. So I think he's been a great addition to the room so far.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Mike.
That was Mike Borgonzi, Titans general manager's pre-draft press conference. We will react coming up next. We'll also take your reaction on our phone and text line 615-737-1025. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you on your Thursday morning. We just heard from Titans general manager Mike Borgonzi. 1 week away from the NFL draft. Pre-draft presser from Borgo, and there was a lot to take from it. Obviously, he is, he's not giving away anything. Mike Borgonzi does a really nice job of saying a lot without telling you much at all. But I thought there were a couple of comments that I highlighted specifically. We'll start with the first one. He was asked about Jeremiah Love right off the bat of, hey, taking a running back high in the draft obviously isn't something that is very common. Is Jeremiah Love somebody who would be valuable there? I thought it was really interesting how he pivoted to the edge guys in that answer. He said, there are a lot of guys we like. Jeremiah obviously is a very talented player, but with the edge guys up at the top, we feel like we're going to have options at number 4. And it is that time of year. Mike Borgonzi even said it. You have to play the game within the game a little bit and put stuff out there, and no one really knows what's real. I thought that was really interesting, Parker, of the way that he was asked about Jeremiah Love and quickly pivoted to the edge group at the top of the draft.
Yeah, and again, it is lying season, so nobody knows really what's true and what's not true. If you heard Charles Robinson today on Robbie and Rex Road, there's a team at Yahoo Sports that, assembles these mock drafts and does all this preparation for next Thursday. And he admitted on the air that a lot of those guys don't actually know what's going to happen outside of the fact that Fernando Mendoza is going to go number 1. So it is lying season. He did say that, but it could be a smokescreen. Who knows? I do know that the Titans are really high on Jeremiah Love as a prospect. My gut feeling is he'll be the pick at 4, but it is lying season.
Yeah, I mean, he specifically talked about the edge guys a lot. Not David Bailey as much, but was asked about Arvell Reese and said he might be one of the most explosive players that he's ever seen. I mean, that's pretty high praise for Arvell Reese. And I know, I think, Parker, Arvell Reese would be the most polarizing pick the Titans could make among Titans fans. Like David Bailey, Jeremiah Love, I think most people would be pretty pleased with. Sonny Styles might be a little polarizing too. Some people may not like him as the pure inside linebacker, but I think Arvell Reese is one of those players that you either love him and think he might be the best player in the draft, or you think you're betting way too much on the potential and the ceiling rather than what he actually has done on the football field. I'm kind of in the middle there. I skew more towards I think he is a really strong prospect, but it is a gamble. I think Arvell Reese is a much riskier pick than a Jeremiah Love or a Sonny Styles. But I think the ceiling of Arvell Reese is Micah Parsons, right? Like, I understand everybody gets tired of the Micah Parsons comparison, but you look at those two players and the prototypes that they match, that's really the only comparison that you can make for Arvell Reese is Micah Parsons. That is his ceiling, though, right? Like, it's not you draft him, he's Micah Parsons right off the bat. That's his ceiling. His floor, obviously, I think is lower than a Jeremiah Love or a Sonny Styles. I do think if Reese is there at 4, he's the pick. Like I may pick Love over Reese if I was given the choice, but I do think if Arvell Reese is sitting there on the board at 4, I do think the Titans will turn the card in for Arvell Reese.
Yeah, that's tough just because any head coach will tell you that you can never have too many edge rushers, right? Ideally you want to get as many as you can. With Reese, I don't know if he is a true edge rusher. I think you can play him at a lot of different positions. I believe Borgonzi was talking about Sonny Styles, though, when he said, you could play him at this position, you can play him at that position, and talking about the versatility there. So I don't know if he's there, if he's going to be the pick, because also too, the Jets didn't bring David Bailey in on a 30.
I think that's because they know they're picking him.
Could be.
That would be my guess. Because,
but what if the Cardinals end up? I think the Cardinals end up taking Reese.
I do too. I think Reese goes 3, whether it's the Cardinals or somebody trading up to 3. I don't think Reese gets to 4. I do think that if he does get to 4, I think the Titans take him. Arvell Reese probably has the highest ceiling of anybody in this draft class. And
That is very fair.
When you're drafting players, you do have to draft on what you think they can become. And Arvel Reese is young, he's talented, and there's so much room to grow on the edge. Like we talked with TD about it, and I think TD asked Mike Borgonzi the question about this of Arvel Reese went on a podcast and basically said, yeah, I was just kind of freeballing it out there at edge rusher. Like I've never had to train pass rush moves or anything like that. I just went out and freestyled, and it works sometimes. And being able to bring him in as an edge rusher and mold that and get him with actual coaching, I think that's got to be tantalizing for Mike Borgonzi and Robert Saleh. So I do think he is the pick at number 4 if he's there. But as we just said, I struggle to see him actually getting there. The Jeremiah Love stuff, I think Mike Borgonzi was trying to, tamp down the expectations on Jeremiah Love a little bit because all the rumors coming out of the combine have linked Jeremiah Love to the Titans. And I think the last thing Borgonzi wants is this spotlight on the Titans as they're taking Jeremiah Love. Because again, somebody could trade up. Maybe they like Reese better anyway, and they'd be fine with it. But I think he wanted to kind of slow the roll, hit the brakes a little bit on all the Jeremiah Love speculation as they went along. Because, I mean, I think he is telling the truth when he says there's a cluster of players that they like there. And I think the edge rushers are included. Bailey, Reese, I think Love, Styles. It's going to be one of those 4 in my mind. I think it's going to be one of those 4 players. And I wouldn't be disappointed with any of them. I also wouldn't be disappointed in a trade back. I think the Titans are going to have some really good options when they sit there at number 4 and come on the clock next Thursday night. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Let's check the text line here. JD says the Titans just have to have a win at 4. We don't need a guy that can play a lot of different places. We need a win with a guy we know can come in and contribute and play immediately. See, that's the issue I have if it is Reese versus Love. Like, for instance, there's been a ton of mock drafts that have the Cardinals going tackle, taking Francis Mauigoa at 3. Or they could go Ty Simpson at 3. Anybody but Reese or Love goes at 3. And they're both sitting on the board for you at 4. I think that's the toughest decision you have to make if you're Mike Borgonzi. Because you're going Arvel Reese, highest ceiling in the class, but risky, versus Jeremiah Love, who I think is the safest prospect in the draft, but doesn't play the premium position where, Arvel Reese, if he turns into Micah Parsons, that is a franchise-changing player. Jeremiah Love, a running back, yes, can be very helpful for your team, but is not going to have the impact on your team that an all-pro pass rusher can have.
I disagree with that last part because if he turns out to be a generational guy, if he's Jahmyr Gibbs, if he's Bijan Robinson, then I think that's absolutely worth the 4th overall pick. Now, if this was the previous staff with Arvel Reese, this is a developmental project, then I don't think you would trust them to develop him properly. But since it's Saleh, I think you do have that. But the tiebreaker for me is going to go to Love, and here's the one reason why. Because you stockpiled so much, there are going to be plenty of needs all over the place for the Titans. They kind of put a Band-Aid on the need for an edge rusher in free agency by going and getting John Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson. You still need edge rushers, but that puts a Band-Aid on it for right now. You didn't add enough in free agency on the offensive side of the ball to give Cam Ward enough help. He's the franchise, so you want to build around him. And I think adding a generational running back at 4, who I believe is the best player in the draft, that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, and I can see both sides of it. That Jeremiah Love, I think, maybe most talented player in the draft, probably safest player in the draft. Arvel Reese is the guy who, if he meets his potential, he could be a superstar. But that's a big if, right? And that's what these general managers have to judge is the if worth it with Arvel Reese versus
I would feel comfortable taking him because of Saleh.
Right.
But again, I just think you need more on the offensive side.
I agree. And, the draft, we will talk more about some of the things that Mike Borgonzi said on the offensive side of the ball in the next segment. But first, let's go to our phone lines. Ryan is called in talking about Jeremiah Love. Ryan, thanks for calling. Good morning.
How are you guys?
Doing great.
All right, repeat after me. The 4th pick in the NFL 2026 draft, Jeremiah Love goes to the Tennessee Titans, University of Notre Dame. Let's just believe it's going to happen and pray about it, and we'll get Jeremiah Love in the draft.
There I go. There you go. I love it. We're manifesting it.
I already
at
have
this
it
point.
tattooed on my body.
Yeah.
So
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks for the call, Ryan. And that's why I say I think Arvell Reese would be the most polarizing pick among the Titans fan base. I think Jeremiah Love would be almost universally loved by the Titans fan base. I think you could say pretty much the same about David Bailey, too. Sonny Styles, I think, would be loved. And then I think you'd have some issues with some of the other guys down the board, Carnell Tate, Ruben Bain. But I think Arvell Reese, you'd have a ton of Titans fans who are thrilled and a ton of Titans fans who are really disappointed. I'm looking at you, Keegan. I think that it would be a really polarizing decision. That doesn't mean it's a bad one, though. 615-737-1025. We will continue to take your reaction on our phone and text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We will also talk more about what Mike Borgonzi said about the wide receivers and specifically a very interesting comment on the offensive line. We'll talk about it next. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up here on 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you, wrapping up the second hour of the show. We just heard from Mike Borgonzi at his pre-draft press conference. Lots of good stuff in there. And we were having the conversation in the previous segment about Arvell Reese versus Jeremiah Love, because Mike Borgonzi had some glowing comments about Arvell Reese. He said specifically, he is one of the most explosive players that I've ever seen. He has all of the tools to play on the edge. They used him a lot off the ball and on the line of scrimmage. You can do a lot of a player with a player like that early in his career. And it's a split vote on the text line with this. I think a lot of people do like the idea of Arvell Reese in the ceiling, but there are some people out there who say, let's see, 9877 says the Titans need someone who is going to make them relevant. They haven't been for 4 years and won't be watching again until they are. They need to draft Love. I think Love is the pick, but I'm not the GM. You've also got people saying, like JD, who says Derrick Henry changed this organization, as did Eddie George. If Love is that good, you have to take him. And I understand the sentiment of Love is the safe pick. You plug him in, and I feel like there's not much doubt that he is going to immediately be a top 10 running back in this league. That doesn't mean he's a Hall of Famer, though, right? Like, and I know a lot of people want to say you put Love in there, throw on a gold jacket immediately, and, you know, we'll look back in 10 years and he's won a couple Super Bowls for the Titans. Jeremiah Love is going to be a good player at the NFL level. I have no doubt about that. But the degree to that, I don't know. Like, is he going to be a Hall of Famer? Is he going to have Derrick Henry-like production? That's a really, really high bar. Could he end up being Bijan Robinson? Sure. I could 100% could see that. Could he be Alvin Kamara in his prime? Yes. Could he be Jahmyr Gibbs? Yes. Does that have as much of an impact on your team as an elite all-pro pass rusher, which I think that is Arvell Reese's ceiling? Again, it's less guaranteed, but I think that you have to look at it and say, if you're looking for impact on your team as you are trying to build up this roster, I really do think that Arvell Reese could be the most impactful player in this draft if he's able to live up to the expectations.
You know, all this presser did was confuse us more, because we went from talking about, you know, if you remember all the way back when we first started the draft talk, it was Reuben Bain. And then it was, you know, Reuben Bain versus David Bailey. Now it's Jeremiah Love, and then Sonny Styles got thrown in the mix. Now, you know, we're talking about Arvell Reese. He did a fantastic job of blowing smoke.
He's got us in a blender right
now.
now.
Yeah. So I have no idea what is going on. No idea.
And I'll say it again. The Reese conversation probably is irrelevant because I think he's going 3. Like, I do think that Bailey and Reese will be off the board when the Titans are picking.
And he said, too, if they had to draft today, they would be ready.
Yep.
So, which is, you know, honestly, they could have been ready a week ago as well, because you have to have all your work done by this point. But, you know, when he was asked about Jeremiah Love, then he pivoted to the edge rushers, and he said there's, you know, he's not worried if a team wants to trade up,
right,
and if they take their guy because there's so many players there. It's typical Mike Borgonzi.
And I don't think he's lying about that. Like,
don't think he is either.
I think Bailey, Reese, Love, Styles, I think those 4, they would be happy with any of them at number 4. And you're going to have at least 2 of them on the board, with Mendoza going 1. So you're going to have options if you're Mike Borgonzi. It's just a matter of what they're going to value most. At wide receiver, he made a comment there about, he thought immediately he was asked about wide receiver in the top end, and he said, I think it's a deep receiving class. Again, could be a smokescreen, but that being his initial reaction makes me think he's probably going to be looking for a receiver later in the draft. Not later, but outside of the first round.
Second round or third round,
yes,
seems like the sweet spot.
I think it makes more sense to take a receiver on day 2, obviously, unless you trade back.
Branch will be there, Brazel will be there, Jeremy Bernard, you know, Chris Bells, they'll all be there.
There's a list of a dozen wide receivers that should be available on day 2. And again, the Titans have the first pick on day 3, which I know you say, oh, well, they spent 2 4th-round picks on receivers last year. But with the depth of this wide receiver group, I think there's going to be a wide receiver there at 101 that probably is going to be a tier above DK and Iamaner as a prospect at the very least. So I like the idea of waiting on wide receiver. He talked about the offensive line too, and we'll get into that coming up next because I thought the most interesting comment that he made was about the offensive line. We'll get into that to start off hour number 3. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We will continue to take your reaction to Mike Borgonzi's pre-draft press conference as we are 1 week away from the NFL draft. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and all of our football offseason coverage is brought to you by Tennessee Brewworks, finely tuned craft beer for finely tuned fans. Tennessee Brewworks, the official craft beer of the offseason coverage on 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up here on 102.5 The Game. Final hour on this Thursday. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Fun couple hours to start the show. Max Herz joined us in the first hour talking all things Preds. Again, Preds season finale tonight at Bridgestone Arena, 7 o'clock puck drop against the Anaheim Ducks. And also, Mike Borgonzi speaking this morning to the media in his pre-draft press conference, 1 week away from the NFL draft in Pittsburgh, and we are reacting to everything that Mike Borgonzi had to say. We talked a lot about the top of the draft. I thought the most interesting comment that he had was on left tackle. The question was asked about, hey, Dan Moore, you have him locked in. You've invested a lot in Dan Moore, but would you consider taking a left tackle early? And here was what he said. Borgonzi said, big guys are hard to find. That's why they get taken so high. When you have a chance to acquire players like that, you have to do it. Having a young tackle in here to develop, you have to think about it. That's the first time I think we've heard from Mike Borgonzi specifically on the tackle position, because right now it's not a need. Dan Moore, not a great player, but he is a serviceable starter at left tackle. Not a long-term solution, but that spot is filled for 2026. J.C. Latham, you hope, is your right tackle of the next decade. Hasn't proven it yet, but this is a big year for J.C. Latham. Your tackle spots are settled for 2026. The way he talked about it, Parker, I don't know if you got this feeling too, but I think tackle may be more on the table on day 2 than maybe we've initially thought.
Yeah, it is tough because the way you feel about the offensive line, I personally do not feel good about the offensive line. You're hoping J.C. Latham is going to be able to be that franchise right tackle for you. You don't know. We don't know yet. Dan Moore, you don't feel great about the option at left tackle, so it does make sense where he's coming from. If you were to draft a tackle, bring him in and allow him to compete, where my mind went when he was talking about the offensive line in general and how you can find, starters late day 2, day 3, my mind went to center, getting a guy like Jake Slaughter, or maybe even if you want to go later on day 3, bringing in a guy like Pat Coogan, who played with Jeremiah Love at Notre Dame, if he ends up being the pick. So I think both of those guys could absolutely start for you at center at some point, probably not right away, but definitely at some point. That's kind of where my mind went, but it does make sense for them to bring in a tackle to compete with J.C. Latham, to compete with Dan Moore, because competition should, if you're a professional, ultimately bring the best out of you.
Yeah, and you're going to have to fill that spot at some point, probably next year. Dan Moore, the way his contract worked, I believe once his salary became guaranteed, it wasn't a clean out after next year anymore, but you can still get out with minimal dead cap after next season. And I think they will. Dan Moore was fine last year. He wasn't the worst tackle in the league, but he also wasn't exactly a stalwart on the left side of the line. You're going to need to find a long-term solution there, and the only way to find a franchise left tackle is early in the draft. You're not going to find you are almost never going to find a franchise left tackle on day 3. It's happened, but for the most part, it's got to come early on. And if you're sitting there at 35 and there's a tackle that you didn't think was going to get to you in the first round, it wouldn't be my favorite pick because I've said it the entire offseason. You have neglected edge and wide receiver at the top of the draft for so long. But if you've got a chance to find a guy you believe can be your franchise left tackle, and even if you feel like he's more of a project and he needs a year behind Dan Moore, I would understand the Titans saying offensive line with our young quarterback is going to be so crucial. We can check this need off for the next 5 years and move on. And then next year we'll have more flexibility with what we can do. I wouldn't hate it, but it does seem, based on the way he talked, that it's more of a possibility than maybe we initially thought. I will say I am going to be horrible pronouncing the name of the Arizona State left tackle. Ihia Nachor, that not even close. But Max over at Arizona State, the left tackle. I've seen that he is sneaking towards the first round, maybe not a consensus first-round pick yet, that would be the guy I think you might want to keep your eye on at 35 if the Titans do go left tackle. I saw Dane Brugler had him mocked to the Titans at 35 in his 7-round mock draft yesterday. That's the name that I think you would keep an eye on for the Titans at 35 if he's sitting on the board. But
if he does sneak into the first round, though, Jennings Dunker of Iowa won the Joe Moore Award for having the best offensive line in college football last year. So that's certainly an option. And I will give a sleeper because I think this is a guy that you can get on day 3 that, is probably not going to start to begin his NFL career. But Isaiah World at Oregon, he was a transfer from Rhode Island, had 1 year of experience playing at the Power 4 level. He was a projected first-round pick before the season. And now he's slipped to day 3. So I could see a little bit of value there.
I think that's possible too, that they maybe just go left tackle or tackle in general late on day 3. It's not a great name that people are going to love, but a Jalen Duncan type pick of, hey, this guy's got a lot of tools. Let's see if we can bring it's just because that's the guy I think of when I think of lottery ticket tackles you take on day 3. Obviously, Jalen Duncan did not turn out to be very good, but he's one of those guys who has a lot of tools, didn't produce very well at the college level, but maybe with the right offensive line coach, you can get more out of him. I know
I'm sorry, I said Rhode Island. He transferred from Nevada
Gotcha.
to Oregon.
Gotcha. So offensive line is going to be a spot the Titans will address in this draft. I think certainly on the interior, but the way Mike Borgonzi talked about tackle makes me think that they may target a tackle of the future on day 2 at some point. You mentioned center and right guard. I agree with you that his answer on that made me think that they're not going to address that at 35, right? Like Basantis and Pregnon, those are the 2 guys who are borderline first-round picks on the interior of the offensive line. And again, it could all be a smokescreen, right? Like it's lying season. Mike Borgonzi is probably trying to make himself as much of an enigma as possible. But the way he talked about it, he said there's good depth at interior offensive line, day 1, 2, and 3. You can find guys in the middle rounds. And I like the comment he made of guys at the interior of the offensive line sometimes slip just because they don't test well. But at center and right guard, you're looking more for the intangibles of smart guys, centers who can set up protections, guards who are going to be road graders in the run game. Like I agree with him that there may be guys who fall through the cracks who are really good players that just didn't test well that maybe you could get at 101. And you've got those 2 picks at the top of the 5th round, 142 and 144. I would think at least one of those picks is going to go onto the interior of the offensive line.
Yeah, I am interested to see when that pick comes because, if they go Love, if they go Bailey, if they go Reese, wherever, Sonny Styles in the first round, then you go maybe edge rusher or receiver in the second round. I think it's going to be edge rusher and receiver. That's just my gut feel in whatever order you want, the second and third round. So I would think that this offensive line pick would have to come on day 3.
Yeah, and Mike Borgonzi did make note of you can't draft for need, right? You can't reach down the board for somebody who's not as much of a value just because you feel like you need that in 2026. I like the way he framed it of just because it's a need this year doesn't mean that it's going to be a need next year. You have different ways that you can acquire players. So I agree with you, especially if you go Love or Styles at 4. I think edge and wide receiver are the positions I would highlight and circle on day 2, with offensive line probably as number 3. But I also think that you have to look at it as if there's somebody that they value that, let's say at 66, they were choosing between player A and player B at 35 and valued both of them pretty close to the same and took player A, and somehow player B falls down the board to 66, even if he's not at one of those positions that you need right now, I'm okay with taking the guy that they believe is going to be the best player. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We've got another pair of Team Boxing League tickets to give away. Be caller number 3 at 615-737-1025, and you will win a pair of tickets to Team Boxing League as Nashville Smash faces Phoenix Fury at Municipal Auditorium tomorrow night. Again, caller number 3, 615-737-1025, wins 2 tickets to Team Boxing League tomorrow night. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up here on 1025 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game, Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly. Got a couple more segments left on this Thursday. Again, if you're missing Teron Davenport today, no worries. We are going to have a TD Friday tomorrow. Full show with TD talking draft as we enter draft week. 1 week from today, the NFL draft begins in Pittsburgh. We are reacting to Mike Borgonzi's pre-draft press conference. I have a couple of thoughts I want to get to, but let's start by going to our phone lines. Driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Dustin in Hopkinsville is called in. Dustin, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Good morning, guys. So I really enjoy having Borgonzi. I think he's so much better than John Robinson ever thought about being. And John Robinson, to me, was a very good GM. But I hate to, but I got to give Amy credit. This dude, he is just a businessman in the sports realm like none other. And I'm going to tell you what he's going to do. It's one of two things, and you're going to say, duh. All right? He's not drafting defense. He's either going love or he's trading back and he's getting more pieces. Last year, what he did, he took a mess, all right, and he got really good players. There's some that haven't even really played for us yet, the running back that he drafted.
Mullins.
And, yeah, all but one, the guy they put at edge, we don't even – he's still a question mark. This man knows our defense right now. You don't go draft corners at 4 and safeties and things like that. It's either love or he's trading back and getting 2 picks. And what he's focused on for the success of this team, and it's not going to be, Super Bowl bound next year. If you're thinking that, anybody, you're silly. All right. What he's going to do is he's going to do the best thing to preserve his job, which is giving Cam Ward as many weapons on offense to answer all the question marks as soon as possible. It's love or trade back and get a Makai Lemon or something like that. I just know in my heart that's what it is.
And I'd be happy with both of those outcomes for the Titans. I will say, Dustin, let's wait for Mike Borgonzi to have some skins on the walls before you say he's better than John Robinson. I know the John Robinson era didn't end well here. Bad drafts, the A.J. Brown trade. But John Robinson was a winning GM for a majority of his time here. Mike Borgonzi, I really like what Borgonzi's done. I love listening to him. I think he comes off as a very smart and put together general manager, which is awesome. But let's just take a beat before we say he's better than John Robinson quite yet. Maybe, but not yet. Let's go back to the phone lines. Brandon is called in. Brandon, thanks for calling. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. How y'all doing?
Doing great.
All right, man. But yeah, I agree with you, man. Let's wait a minute to say that he's better than John Robinson, even though it didn't end well with J-Rob. But well, we know he's better than Rand Carthon. Anybody better than Rand Carthon? Let's just be real about that. But hey, anyway, I called because look, I've been seeing a lot of mock drafts out there, and look, I've been bounced around early in the draft portion, and look. I feel like the best route we can do at number 4 is take Jeremiah Love. Now, that guy is an impact player instantly as soon as he touched the football field. We need somebody like that that's going to spark this offense because let's be real. Last year, Cam Ward was the only – Eli Iron Manor and Timray DK, they did a couple things, Gunnar Ham, okay. But Cam Ward was the only guy we had on the field last year on offense that produced and tried to do what he could. Jeff Simmons is the man on defense. Now, we vamped up the defense during free agency. John Frankenmeyers, Jermaine Johnson, got the 2 corners. That's cool. But we need a spark on offense. Jeremiah Love is the guy that's going to give us that spark that we need. Look at the history of the Titans. We always been a solid to damn near great offense, great team when we had a running back. They go from Eddie George, Eric Campbell waited for my time. So I'm going to say Eddie George, Chris Johnson, Derrick Henry, and now Jeremiah Love. If we get Jeremiah Love, I think Borgonzi is going to do it. I don't care about the positional value. all I care about who is the best player on the board that can help my team right now. That's Jeremiah Love. I'm a big Jeremiah Love fan. I like Arvell Reese. I like David Bailey. You know, Sonny Style. I like Sonny Style. You know, kind of giving that Fred Warner type of comp. But I am 100% sold on Jeremiah Love. And if they go a different route, I'll support it because I'm a Titans fan to the heart. Like, I'm going to support this team no matter what they do. But I'm telling you, if we get Jeremiah Love, I guarantee you this team wins at least 9 games. I don't care what nobody say, at least 9 games. Now, we got to fix the offensive line. I'm more worried about the offensive line. I think we need to target somebody in second round. You know, me personally, I feel more comfortable we go get Chase Pasandis or Emmanuel Pregnon or Kalen Rudley, somebody in the second round. Let's go ahead and take care of the offensive line. But Jeremiah Love, we get Jeremiah Love. I'm stamping it right now, at least 9 wins. I'm going to hang up and I'm going to listen to y'all. Thanks for taking my call. Tighten up.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Brandon. It's a bold prediction, 9 wins. You know,
I'll one up you. 10 wins. No,
Oh,
I'm just kidding.
3. I mean, tripling your wins in 1 year because of a running back.
We
would
do
be-
share the same sentiment when it comes to getting players that can help you right now. And
Well,
that's Jeremiah Love.
You need offensive playmakers badly, and the only offensive playmaker who is worthy of picking at number 4 is Jeremiah Love. I think we can all agree on that, and I think Jeremiah Love is the most likely pick at number 4.
I think Sonny Styles is too. Like I would, I think Caleb Downs, and I would put Arvell Reese in there. I think those are, in whatever order, the top 4 best players in the draft. But I'm thinking solely about, okay, here's what we have on the defense. Here's what's on the offense. You need more on the offensive side of the ball. What helps Cam Ward the most?
Yep.
That's where my mindset has been for the last 2 months.
I think that it is the most likely outcome that it goes Bailey, Reese, Love. You never know with the draft, but I think that's the way like Vegas has it right now. I think that's the kind of the consensus is it's going to go Bailey at 2, Reese 3, Love 4 to the Titans. I will say, though, Connor Hughes, who he covers the Jets and Giants up there in New York, he put out a mock draft this morning. And when talking about the Cardinals, he says, quote, the Cardinals could opt for whichever pass rusher the Jets pass on at number 2, but don't be surprised if they select Jeremiah Love. There's a lot of smoke there. So I know that based on our callers and texters and Twitter, a lot of Titans fans are all in on Jeremiah Love. There's no guarantee he gets there. And it would give you options, right? Like it would probably at that point, you'd be taking one of the Ohio State linebackers, either Reese or Styles. But I want to just put that out there that Connor Hughes is reporting that up there in New York. I don't know his sources with the Cardinals or anything like that, but I think there might be a heartbreak across Nashville if Jeremiah Love goes 3 to Arizona.
There would be. But Borgonzi isn't wrong. I mean, it's not like I'm going to be upset and mad at whatever player is drafted at 4 if it doesn't end up being Jeremiah Love because he gets picked before you. If it's Arvell Reese, I will be happy because I trust Saleh can develop him. If it's Sonny Styles, I believe Sonny Styles is a top 5 player in this draft. Or if there's a trade back option, I'd be happy. But my heart is set on Jeremiah Love.
Justin from Greenbrier asked an interesting question too. He says, I know this scenario is not likely, but what if a team moves up in your spot at 4? Who would the Titans circle if they move back to 12? So we talked about the possibility of a trade back with the Cowboys yesterday, 12 and 20. Here's a name that we didn't bring up yesterday that last night I was just kind of scrolling through mock drafts and trying to think of scenarios for the Titans. A name we didn't bring up that unlikely, very unlikely, but I don't think would be off the table if the Titans traded back. Monroe Freeling, the left tackle from Georgia. I don't think it's going to happen. First off, I think a trade back is unlikely. And if they trade back, I don't think it would be him. But I don't think it would be out of the question because I think he is the best pure left tackle in this draft class. Like Maui Noah and Fano and Vega Ione, they might be better offensive linemen than Freeling, but I think Freeling is the best pure left tackle. You plug him in there on your blind side, and you're good.
Because Mavigoa and Fano are both
They're both going to play
right
the right
tackle.
side. So that, again, unlikely, but it was a name I thought of, and I was like, man, we haven't talked about it. He's not going to be in play at 4, obviously, but if the Titans traded back, I don't think he would be off the table. 615-737-1025. We've got a lot of reaction on the text line. We will get to those coming up next. If you have any thoughts on the Titans draft as we are a week out, we will get to your reaction. We got 2 more segments left in the show. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up here on 1025 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you for a couple more segments on this Thursday. Again, had to move things around with the press conference this morning. TD couldn't make it in today, but luckily we got TD for the full show tomorrow. Excited for that as we get ready for the NFL draft, which is just a week away in Pittsburgh. Titans at number 4. It's a big story, of course, locally, but also nationally. And I've seen a lot of different analysts, experts talking about Jeremiah Love to the Titans at number 4. And on the text line, it seems like everybody is on board with taking Love at 4. Dustin from Hopkinsville, who just called in, texted, if he takes a player at 4 and it's not Love, the best generational talent in the draft, I will burn my Titans jerseys. I'll be going to another team. He can trade back, but he can't pick anyone but Love at 4. 5492 says Saleh will improve the defense while he's here, but the Titans scored 16.7 points per game. We need offensive help and someone to make Cam better. Love will make Cam better, and we will score more points. Ron says, who else in the draft can put butts in seats at Nissan Stadium? No one but Love, and Amy knows that too.
That's true, but that's not why you take a player.
Not why you take him. So, I mean, it might be a vocal minority, but based on what I've seen, I think Love is who everybody wants in this draft in Nashville. And I get it. That is when I'm thinking, and you throw logic out the window, positional value, all that, and just say, who would be the most fun to watch on this team? The answer is 100% Jeremiah Love. Pairing Jeremiah Love and Cam Ward together, yes, it puts butts in seats. It sells jerseys, and it gets people excited about this team again. There are a lot of reasons to draft Jeremiah Love. And I think I would lean towards Jeremiah Love if anybody but David Bailey is on the board with him. I would take Bailey over Love. Reese would be a tough one for me, but outside of that, it's Love. I'd take Love over Styles, over Bain, over Tate, over Downs. I think Jeremiah Love would be a good pick at number 4 in this year's draft. But it's not guaranteed, and we're just going to have to see the way the board falls. And I mentioned the note there from Connor Hughes of SNY, who covers the Giants and the Jets. He said there's a lot of smoke around the Cardinals liking Jeremiah Love at number 3. I will say one thing, though, Parker, and this might have nothing to do with anything, but do you know who is announcing the day 2 picks for the Cardinals this year in Pittsburgh?
Who would that be?
James Conner.
Ah.
So how hilarious would it be if they draft Jeremiah Love on day 1 and then run the guy he just replaced out onto the stage to announce their next couple of picks on Friday? I don't think the Cardinals are going to take Love. That could be a smokescreen coming from somebody who wants, or honestly, it could be from the Cardinals themselves trying to see if the Titans want to come up and get Jeremiah Love, or if another team wants to jump both teams to go get Jeremiah Love. It's lying season. 3337 says, is it smart to pick a running back at 4 when you don't even know who the center is? The offensive line is something that needs to be addressed. And we spent a good amount of time on the offensive line in the last hour talking about Mike Borgonzi's comments on an eventual replacement for Dan Moore at left tackle. Maybe that comes this year in the draft. What they want to do on the interior of the offensive line, they have to figure out the offensive line 100%. But I don't think that you can just not take the guy you believe is the best player because you don't feel 100% set at center and right guard. Like, we had the same conversation around Cam Ward last year. People were saying, don't take Cam Ward. You need to set up the team around him before you take Cam Ward. If you think a guy is generational and you think a guy can be your franchise quarterback, you take him. And then you figure it out, because you're not going to have the number 1 pick every year. Titans were just as bad this past year, maybe even worse than they were 2 years ago. They're not in position to take a quarterback this year. You just never know. And that's why I think you've got to pick the best player, the guy you think is going to be best for your team, regardless of what's going on around him. You got to figure those things out. You can't just ignore the offensive line. But if you think Jeremiah Love is the best player in the draft and is going to make the biggest impact on your team, you take him, and then you try and put the pieces around him to give him the best chance to have success.
Yeah, you can't ignore the offensive line, because there is the aspect of You don't want Jeremiah Love to have an Ashton Genty season from last season where, you may believe Ashton Genty is a generational running back as well, but he didn't have an offensive line to protect him. So that's why the Raiders, they went out and they got Tyler Linderbaum. That's also for Fernando Mendoza as well, but the sentiment is all the same. You go out and you get an offensive line so that those running backs have people to run behind. So we can't sit here and act like the Titans offensive line is not an issue right now, because it is. And you have a lot of questions going into this thing. So I absolutely do believe it needs to be addressed in the draft. And I'm honestly shocked it wasn't addressed earlier in free agency.
I agree. I am a little shocked after cutting Lloyd Cushenberry and at this point letting Kevin Zeitler walk. He's still out there. They could bring him back if they need to after the draft. But I am a little shocked that they did not invest more in that group so far this offseason. The offensive line objectively is worse than it was last year. How are they going to fix that? Does that come in the draft? But I don't think that should stop you from drafting a playmaker like Jeremiah Love. You got to fix the offensive line, but that doesn't mean you just pass on a guy because you're like, oh, well, we're going to suck even if we had him anyway. Let's just pick somebody else. I think you still take Love. Let's see. We got lots of hypotheticals coming in on the text line. Richie from White House says, let's say the Titans decided to trade back to 12 with the Cowboys. By trading back, they lose out on drafting Love, Reese, Bailey, or even Styles, and they ultimately end up drafting Reuben Bain. I can only imagine how many fans will be calling in the next day and giving hell about them drafting Bain. See, I've held the position from the very beginning. Bain at 12 makes me feel better, especially if you get 22. Like, if you get 12 and 20 and you end up with Reuben Bain at 12, yes, he's still an outlier. Yes, he's still a unicorn, but you're not investing top 5 draft capital in him. I'd feel better about it. So, yes, I do. I do think, though, if the Titans trade down and Jeremiah Love is on the board, well, there are going to be a lot of unhappy callers next Friday morning. Let's finish this segment with this one. And I'm going to reserve the right to change my prediction until next Thursday. We will have us and TD make a call leading up to draft night next Thursday. But 8395 says, call your shot. What do you think and predict the Titans will do at number 4? 1 week out, if I had to guess right now at number 4, I think the Titans select Jeremiah Love. That based on all of the tea leaves that we've seen, based on what Mike Borgonzi has said, based on what we've heard from around the league, I think Jeremiah Love is the pick at number 4.
I do as well. I've been saying this for a while,
yeah.
So there's really no surprise.
No, I mean, I think, again, I will reserve the right to change my prediction until next Thursday. We will make our final prediction next Thursday, but I think it's going to be Jeremiah Love as it stands right now. And I don't think that's a shocker, right? Like, that's what the odds say it's going to be.
Breaking news.
That's what most mock drafts say it's going to be. Who am I to disagree with them? I think Love makes sense for this team. In this draft, without a ton of blue chip premium position talent, I think it makes sense. But it's the NFL draft. It is one of the hardest sporting events to predict, right? Like, it's not about performance. It's about what people think and opinions on players. So it's like instead of having to, you have film to go watch of like a game and say, all right, well, I've watched the Titans play and I've watched the Seahawks play. I think the Seahawks are going to win. This is all what these specific front offices value the most. So it's unpredictable. But again, if I had to guess 1 week out, I think it's going to be Jeremiah Love. 615-737-1025. We've got one more segment left on this Thursday morning. We will get more of your reaction, and we'll wrap up the show coming up next. 615-737-1025. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, wrapping up the show on this Thursday morning. Chase and Big Joe are coming up next. Again, tomorrow on the show, we had to push TD Thursday today because of the Mike Borgonzi pre-draft presser. So, Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, will be with us for all 3 hours tomorrow, starting at 9 a.m. So excited for that. Parker, next time we talk on the air, 9 a.m. tomorrow, we will be within a week of the NFL draft. It is finally almost here.
You say that, and all that comes to my mind is we're one day closer to rewatching draft day.
Yes, that is true. That is true. Next Wednesday. It's coming up quick. I mean, I heard Robbie and Ian talk about this at the end of Robbie and Rex Road this morning, and it's just like, because of how fast the Titans season went south, we have been talking draft adjacent since like October. I mean, it's been 6 months.
Throw up all over the place.
And it's like, I love the draft. The draft is one of my favorite events of the year, but I do miss talking about actual football, because once we got past the Colts game, basically, it was like, all right, well, you're 0-3 at that point. The season is not looking like you're going to do much, and you're probably going to fire the coach soon. So I am really, really excited to get to draft night and actually have the players on the roster. And we are just over a week away from doing that. A week from tonight, the NFL draft begins. And Mike Borgonzi, he spoke earlier today. We talked about some of the big takeaways from his presser. Here were a couple other things that I highlighted. He mentioned that I thought this was a really good question on drafting a player the coach doesn't like, because we heard a lot last year about Shedeur Sanders and the Browns, and that Kevin Stefanski wasn't on board. And I don't think Stefanski handled it the right way, but that's why you don't draft players that the coaches aren't on board with, because as Mike Borgonzi said, that is how you develop friction within the organization. And that never is going to be good. You want alignment from the front office to the coaching staff. And I thought Borgonzi put it in a good way of, like, you have these discussions and you go back and forth pre-draft so that you're not battling in the war room on draft day and having Robert Saleh and one of the scouts going at it about an edge rusher that they want to take.
Which, by the way, I would not want to go at it with Robert Saleh.
True. I would avoid battling with Robert Saleh. But I thought he said it in a very nuanced way of, like, yeah, there's going to be disagreements between the coaching staff and the front office, but you have those conversations, you go through all of the scenarios, and that way on draft night, you're aligned and your board is set. A couple other comments. He mentioned Jordan Tyson's medicals, said that they didn't have any issues with it. I believe it wasn't concerning to other teams see it differently. I don't think Jordan Tyson is in play for the Titans. Maybe in a trade back, but that would be surprising, I would say, if Jordan Tyson ends up being a Titan. There's been no smoke around it. Obviously, the medicals have been an issue. He's a good player. I would be really surprised if Jordan Tyson ended up being a Titan. And there was one more that I wanted to get to. I wrote down so many different things from what he had to say. I liked the thought on the transfer portal, where he was talking about the older players and how, yes, you bring in older players who might be more pro ready. I think the question was kind of framed around Akeem Messidor with Miami, who he's an older player, and you might say, yeah, of course the 24-year-old is beating up on the 20-year-olds he's playing. So he might be closer to his ceiling, but also he might be more pro ready. And he mentioned the transfer portal, that might have an impact on these players lacking consistency because they're not having the same coach working with them for 3 or 4 years. They're moving around from school to school, and sometimes you have to take them back to the basics because of that. I thought that was a very different thought process that I hadn't really thought of before when it comes to the transfer portal, of not having that consistent coaching could end up having an impact on what the coaches are able to do with these players when they get to the NFL.
Yeah, it's one of my gripes with, the way the college game is set up right now, because these players, well, even in the NFL, they're not really developed anymore in college, just because they're hopping around from college to college in this era of the NIL and transfer portal, which is really unfortunate because you're far from a finished product once you graduate high school. But because you're experiencing all these different coaching staffs and you're going to these different schools, you're not getting properly developed, so that when you get to the NFL, it used to be once you got to the NFL, those coaches trusted that the coaches in college had already developed you, so you were a finished product, and all they had to do was basically install whatever system it was they ran so you could hit the ground running. Now it's exactly what you said. You have to start over from ground zero and work your way up.
And you still see some of that, right? With the Ohio State wide receivers, right? Like, you trusted the Ohio State coaches were going to have those guys pro ready. Now Brian Hartline is gone, but that was something that you looked at and you said, Ohio State wide receivers, they're coming in, they're talented, and they're pro ready. Couple other things that Mike Borgonzi mentioned. He did talk about Sonny Styles, and Fred Warner is the comp for Sonny Styles. Like, that's what everybody talks about. And I get it based on what he does on the field. But Borgonzi did mention, like, there is no comp for Sonny Styles. We had the opposite conversation about Ruben Bain Parker with Corey Curtis, where Corey told me my comps stink. And I was like, there are no comps. He has first percentile arms. It's the opposite for Sonny Styles. He has 99th percentile everything. Like, it's tough to make a comp on Sonny Styles because no one has done what he's done before. So I really do think it comes down to those four players at number 4. You're going to have an option of at least 2 of them: Bailey, Reese, Love, and Styles. I would be shocked if it's anybody outside of that group at this point. The only other guys that I could imagine, like maybe Carnell Tate, maybe Caleb Downs. But outside of that, I think it's those 4: Love, Styles, Reese, Bailey. And I would probably put it in that order of the likelihood right now, because I don't think David Bailey's getting out of the top 3. So yes, if Bailey's there, he probably is the pick, but I think he's going at worst 3. Reese, I think, is going 3, but a little more likely to get to 4 than Bailey. Styles, I think he'll be there. I don't think he's the pick. I think Love is the most likely selection for the Titans. That's how I have it a week out. I think it's Love, Styles, Reese, Bailey.
I don't disagree. I think Bailey's going to the Jets. I think Reese is going to the Cardinals, and I think it's Love to the Titans.
But it's the draft, so
we could get something crazy. We could get a trade into the top 2 to get Travis Hunter.
Right, and I think the wild card in all of this, and I do want to spend time on this, not tomorrow, but next week as we lead up to the draft, Ty Simpson. Like, I do think we are hearing almost nothing about Ty Simpson.
Oh, I watched the episode with Gruden's QB class yesterday with Ty Simpson. Really good.
So I did see that I think it was James Palmer just tweeted, what's the difference between how much fans and media are talking about Ty Simpson and how much teams are talking about Ty Simpson? I also saw a tweet that said the team that has been most closely connected with Ty Simpson is the Arizona Cardinals. Ty Simpson is attending the draft, which you usually don't do unless you're pretty sure you're a first-round pick. Obviously, there's the Will Levis situation, DK Metcalf a few years before that, who hung out in the green room all day. But I think Ty Simpson could be a wild card in all this. That'll be a topic for next week as we lead up to the draft. But that'll about wrap things up for us. Really fun show. Big thanks to Max Herz for joining us in the first hour. And again, Preds season finale coming up tonight, 7 o'clock puck drop against the Ducks. Go out and support the Preds, even though they're eliminated from the playoffs. Still should be a fun night. It's fan appreciation night over at Bridgestone for the final game of the season. Tomorrow, Teron Davenport with us for the full show. I think tomorrow is going to be one of the more fun shows of the draft season with TD, because we are actually close enough that we can start diving in deep on these things. We've talked with TD for the last few months about the draft, but it's starting to get real. We will be 6 days out the next time we speak. We will have TD for all 3 hours tomorrow. But that wraps things up for us. Don't go anywhere. Chase and Big Joe are coming up next. You're listening to 102.5 The Game.